Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about how not to eat your emotions. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we need to think about this because this is a thinker. So, thankfully, I have a special guest here, Nan, who's going to help us think about this another way. So, thank you so much, Nan, for coming on to my show. Let's go ahead and just dive right in. What does eating your emotions make you think about?
Right. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And yes, eating our emotions, I think that's something that we learn as kids because we can't really express ourselves when we're babies. Food
Absolutely.
is a means of communication with the parents because that's one of the main things to thrive and survive. And then, very often, for lots of people, especially in our society where food is everywhere, so easily accessible, so easily to prepare, that I think it can be for some people, at least it was for me, it's my experience, it was a coping mechanism. So whenever I was feeling bad, whenever I was feeling sad, whenever I was feeling scared, food was the answer. And
Yeah.
of course, we know that food being the rich food that is so easily accessible today, it can lead to several issues, health issues. So that's why I think it's quite important to learn how to cope with our emotions, whatever they are, with different sources of pleasure. We don't need to deprive ourselves of pleasures, but
Yeah.
we need to also, have several different ways to deal with our emotions. Does that answer your
Yeah.
question?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that is a great point to bring up because we do cope with our emotions at a very young age with food. Like, oh, as a mother, I mean my boys are still 2 and 1 years old, and even at an infant age, I had to figure out, okay, why is he crying? You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, why is he crying? He's either he had a poopy diaper, he's just tired, he's burpy, he's gassy, or he's just hungry. So you go down the list and you realize, okay, he's hungry then. Boom, feed him. So it's like we are constantly giving our children food, food, food to just shut them up, but we don't actually stop to realize, okay, what is really wrong? What does he really need? What do I really need? Because, like you said, it's a coping mechanism that we continue into adulthood. And when you really stop and think about it, because I had to start doing this, because I had to start recognizing how do I have, or like what relationship do I have with food? You know what I mean? Like I had to really focus it down because people don't think about their relationship with food. You know what I mean? And I love how you also talked about how it can become unhealthy and we can have a bad relationship with it by like developing eating disorders. You know what I mean? Binge eating, anorexia, bulimia, those are real disorders that develop because of fear of dealing with your emotions too. So you can see the big extremities with obesity and eating your emotions with food, and then also avoiding food by developing anorexia and all of those other eating disorders. So that is a really great point that I'm glad that you brought to attention. So my question to you is when did you start developing a healthy relationship with food?
Well, I'm 50. I turned 50 this year, and it's pretty recent actually, because I think that when I was a teenager, I started thinking about my body, my image, what I wanted to look like, and of course, like many young girls, I went on a diet because I wanted to shed a few pounds. But then that's when it started. I felt scared of being restricted and so on, and that's when I started, like many people, yo-yo dieting, so restricting myself severely, and when it was not sustainable anymore, binge eating. So that lasted actually for 30 years because I couldn't understand what was happening for me. And I kept telling myself, well, next Monday, I'll be good. Next Monday, everything will be different. And I'll be good all day long, all week long, all month long. And of course, I'll drop my unwanted pounds and everything will be fine. But I was still perpetuating this cycle of not
Yeah.
dealing with any emotion. It was just purely eating or not eating. But
Hmm.
the issues were still there. I was still stressed. I was still feeling miserable when I saw my reflection in the mirror. So that was not helping at all until I found what's called life coaching, which is based on cognitive behavioral therapy, which
Okay.
typically says that whatever you do or don't do is based on what you're feeling. So your emotion drive your action. So if I was overeating, eating too much, eating when I was not hungry, it was because I was feeling stressed and I was dealing with that stress with food. Or I was angry at somebody for whatever reason, and I didn't know what to do with this anger. So again, I was using food as a coping mechanism. And I learned then, well, it must have been about 8 years ago. I
Okay.
learned all this process, and I learned that if I was feeling angry, sad, bad, scared, whatever I was, or even happy,
Uh,
it was not random. It was not because of what was happening around me, but it was because of the thoughts I was thinking in the moment. And I didn't know it was a choice. Now
yeah,
I know that whatever I think is going to have an impact in my life, in the way I eat or in the way I behave, because it's going
absolutely.
to create an emotion. So now I know that the food is here, it's always here,
Yeah.
but I'm choosing to have it or not have it because I'm choosing to think something or not that's going to make me feel a certain way, that's going to make me behave a certain way. So now I know I have the power, and now I know what to do with my emotions. I feel so much better, freer, and in control, which was never the case for so long.
No, I absolutely agree. I think it's sad how we don't teach that at a young age. You know what I mean? We don't teach how that understanding of one's emotions first, because once we start understanding our emotions, then we will be able to understand why we are reacting in a certain scenario, like you said. You know what I mean? It wasn't because of the situation that was around you. No, it was what was going on inside of you. And I think when we start to focus on our internal dialogue and how we speak to ourselves inside our minds, we will realize that we develop a lot of the hate that we push out. We develop a lot of the anger, a lot of the frustration. We develop a lot of the insecurities that we develop with time, because in actuality, when I walk outside the door and I interact with the world and I see people, I accept them as all as they are as a whole individual. You know what I mean? I don't see them as anything less or anything more. It doesn't come until someone tells me their insecurities or tells me what their problem is. And then it's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. You know what I mean? So many people don't know that these internal struggles that we're dealing with. And it goes back to, like you said earlier, how food is so accessible. It's in so many ways. You can get it in flea markets and markets, like standing by a bus. You know, there's carts, there's malls, there's facilities. I mean, there's drive-throughs. I mean, people can now bring it to your home. You don't even gotta leave now. I mean, you can cook. There's so many ways to access food where it's not, it has become a silent drug. You know what I mean? An acceptable drug where it's just like people would just say, okay, well, it's easier to feed your emotions than to be self-aware and deal with the inner work that goes with the real work that's going on. And I loved how you said that you had to seafood in a different way where it's like it's there, but I just don't have to eat that. I don't have to choose to eat that. I could choose to eat this instead, or I could choose to eat this small amount right now. And if I am hungry, well, then I can allow myself to eat more. But let me just start some, you know, those are the things that people don't realize. Like you could start gaining trust again within yourself. And that's something that I had to learn, because the word diet, oh my goodness, the word diet was such a harsh word for me. It just
Mhm.
put me in a panic where I was just like, oh, give me all the worst things that I can feed myself and eat. But then I realized like, no, diet is like a box that feels like a prison, but in reality, it's not a prison. It's just there. It's just there. You know what I mean? So it's like when you realize like I'm just not gonna eat that burger tonight, it's okay. Or I'm not gonna eat that greasy, hot like fried food, then you know what I mean? That's okay. But if you choose to be consciously aware and having that self-awareness, I think that really does bring a big difference. So I'm curious, what is one of your biggest like pet peeves in this world?
Hmm. Um, I think, and let me know if I answer your question correctly. I think one of the biggest thing is that you were talking about it a little bit is the way we talk to ourselves about ourselves, and
Hmm.
we can be so mean to ourselves.
Yeah.
And I love that we could turn that. Well, we're very often furious against ourselves, but we could just change one letter and be curious. And that
Yeah.
completely changes the perspective, the way we interact with ourselves, the way we talk to ourselves. So one question that I love and that I use all the time is why. But when my son was little, he would ask me a lot of why. And I thought, first of all, oh, that's normal. Kids ask curious questions, they want to know everything. But his questions were more like, why can't I do this? And why should I do that? That was not curious at all. That was more furious. So we need to be aware when we're talking to ourselves with this tone of voice, just like, I can't have this and I should have this, and bring some more questioning, some more curiosity into this, and just, okay, I'm dealing with this, I'm angry or I'm sad. What's going on? What's going on? It's
Hmm.
legitimate to feel this way. It's real. I'm really feeling this way, but it's not reality either. I have a choice. I can choose to keep feeling this way if I want to. I can choose to keep feeling bad. I don't have to. So really being shifting from furious to curious is a super big thing, because from then on we can get that awareness that you were talking about. It's the first step. It's huge. And from
Absolutely.
there, we can decide to change the way we talk to ourselves. We can be kind. I used to be an English teacher before, and whenever I was, I had students that I'd never seen before that were taking their English tests, oral tests. I was really, I really wanted to encourage them to give their best, and I knew that for them to give their best, I needed to be non-judgmental, really accepting all the mistakes, all the everything they were saying. I think we need to have this same attitude to ourselves, to accept as you were saying, I love the way you phrased it, the wholeness of ourselves. We're not perfect.
No,
Even if we're doing our best, we're not perfect.
exactly.
We're human beings, so we're complete. I like to think of myself, I'm complete. I wish I was perfect, but I need to be honest with myself. I'm just complete. So yeah, I'm experiencing the 50-50 as just I'm a good person and sometimes I'm a bad person. I'm both, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I don't need to add
Yes.
a deeper layer of just, you should be different.
Yeah.
You're bad.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that because I think people forget that you have both. You can be the victim and you can be the victor. You know what I mean? It just depends on the situation and the
Mm,
scenario that you're in, but it does not define you. You know what I mean? And I think one of the biggest things that I keep hearing in just in media and movies and just in general in life right now is that you can validate your feelings, but you cannot validate your actions. You know what I mean?
mm,
You can't give an excuse for your actions because of the way that you're feeling. You have to own up. You have to take that accountability. And I think
mhm,
when we have a closed minds, we don't allow ourselves to grow. We don't allow ourselves to mature and see the lesson and not see our life as a pity party. You know what I mean? As something that just people just wants to like, oh, sorrows, I want pity, I want people to feel bad for me. But in reality, it's like, okay, let's acknowledge what was done for you, what was done to you. It was wrong, it was bad. That's absolutely right. However, how you feel about that situation is absolutely right. Why wouldn't you be upset? Why wouldn't you be feel some type of way? However, how you're going about your life because of that is not valid. You know what I mean? You don't have to live your life upset because we see it in shows all the time. We see it with hoarders and these obesity shows. What do they always say? They eat their emotions, they're eating their situations, they're eating the trauma instead of just
mm.
facing up and owning up to it. And I think once people will realize that self-sabotage is a real thing, people will start realizing like my actions matter. So what is your opinions on self-sabotage?
Yes, well, yeah, it's so interesting. Um, so my opinion on self-sabotage, first of all, when my clients tell me, well, I've been self-sabotaging all weekend, I like to bring it back to the facts, what happened really, because it can sound very dramatic. And also, so let's go back to the fact, what happened really? Did you eat one peanut too many, or did you eat three bags? And then you proceeded to feel guilty and blame yourself, and that's not the same thing. Um,
Absolutely. That's a good
yeah,
point.
and also I like to what you were saying. Something happened, and I like
Mhm.
to remember the past to the past. That happened. Let's make it neutral. Let's go back to the facts, and then decide what we want to think about this event that happened. Do we want to keep blaming ourselves and saying that we shouldn't have, or so on, or do we want to learn from that, from what happened? And we need to be curious about what happened. Okay, so that then we bring it to the future. And I love this analogy. It's like, well, I live in Paris, so I don't need to drive. And I think a lot of people are they're happier for that. But I know we do with a review mirror. You have
Uh-huh.
a little peek in the review mirror to check what's behind you.
Right.
But you mostly focus on what's in front of you, because if you
Mhm.
keep your eyes on the rearview mirror, then an accident is going to happen. And it's the same thing with life. Let's have a quick look at what happened in the past. Let's learn from it, but let's focus on the destination where we want to go, and let's grow from
Absolutely.
there. Let's
Absolutely. Oh
bring
my
everything there.
goodness. I love that analogy. I'd
Mm,
never heard that analogy so far in my life, and that is a really great analogy to think about the past. Is like, yeah, you can reflect on it, just look back, just quick glance, but that's only to guide you to where you're going. It's only to remind you of where of how far you came. But
yes.
it's not about going and just staying back there because imagine that. Imagine how if we were to drive looking the whole entire time in our rearview mirrors on reverse. Goodness, that would be so chaotic and oh my God, I'll be terrified. I would not want to drive. I would be like boycott driving. That is so true. But when you put it in that perspective, when we think about our lives, and I
Mm,
love how you said, let's bring in the facts. Oh, let's bring
mhm,
in the facts because sometimes we can deceive ourselves with a lie.
yeah.
And then we can claim it to be our truth because we have enough fluff or imagination or creativity or whatever facts or reasons that somebody wants to claim. But in reality, the facts are the facts and the facts are the truth. And the
Yeah.
truth is right there. It's black and white. You can't color code it. You know what I mean? So that's the beauty of having those hard questions and
Mm,
reminding ourselves because it's like a reality check. You know what I mean? It's like if you
mm,
take a second to pause, just pause, breathe, even close your eyes if you have to just have that moment to rationalize, it truly helps from arguments, you know what I mean? From getting overstimulated to getting anxious to getting worried. Because I'm a type of individual that avoids being like doing things in public sometimes because I get too overwhelmed with people. But I have to do exactly that. I have to pause, breathe, close my eyes, and rationalize so that I don't get into a panic attack if there's so many people, because it's just like I have to remember this is not my mind is creating more of anxiety than what the situation is. And we do this all the time. And we comfort ourselves with food because we know it's tangible, it's right there, it's physical, we can touch it, we can feel it, we know the cause and the effects, and it's instant gratification. And I think if we start training our minds and our just our whole selves that this instant gratification can be moved in a different way, like we could find that instant gratification by water or just by breathing or just by pausing and or just like taking a moment to just breathe because we are always on the go, 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 go. But when we take a moment to just stop, breathe, look up into the clouds, smell the air, like look at a flower or a tree, you can just it brings back value that we all need to remember that we have and that we are surrounded by. You know what
mm.
I mean? So I'm curious, if you could have a superpower, what could be your superpower?
Oh, such a good question. What would be my superpower? Yeah, I think I'd love to have people aware, more
Mm,
aware of what they're saying. And it ties back to what you just said. It could be as simple as checking in, on a regular basis, several times a day. What am I feeling? And
mhm.
that's it. And I know that for myself, I've used this tiny habit. I don't know if you're familiar with the book by PJ Fogg, Tiny Habits. No?
Oh,
He's a professor from Harvard, and I love his book, which is so pragmatic. It's just, okay, how do you create a habit? And we start by
yeah.
making it super tiny. So basically, it's after you do something which is already a habitual for you, you add a new habit and then you celebrate. So my new habit that I've been practicing for maybe 2 to 3 months is whenever I wash my hands, which I do quite often during the day. So whenever I've put some soap on my hands, then I check in. What am I feeling inside? And that's it. I just give myself one word and then I give myself a big smile in the mirror and that's it. But doing it on such a regular basis every day, it's so quick because I would wash my hands anyway. And then I
Yeah.
just need to come up with one word and that's it. So it helps me really focus on what's going on inside, to be present with myself, to reconnect instead of just thinking about everything that's going on and everything that I've planned and everything that I've done. It's just, no, right now, we've got this few seconds just for me. What am I feeling inside? What is going on inside? And that's really helpful. So if I had a superpower, I love for people to just get those little bits and pieces of awareness throughout their day. And as you said, breathing, taking a deep breath, that does wonders so often. So that would be,
Absolutely.
yeah, to have a world with people who have more space, maybe who are slower to react, and
Yeah.
to give
So
themselves grace and time.
yeah, that's beautiful. It sounds like it would be a nice superpower. It's like a you're giving like a sense of peace and calm and understanding, you know what I mean, with that self-awareness. Like you can touch somebody that you know that's frustrated or pass them by and brush your shoulder just slightly and just and then they're like, I'm all of a sudden calm or well, you know what? I don't need to punch you in the face right now or you know what? I don't even care if my toast is burnt. It's all right. I'll take it. You know what I mean? Those little things that can drive us crazy that we don't be aware that we can walk past somebody, we can feel the frustration or that we can hear it or see
Mm,
the just the energy is getting really, really intense. It'll be nice to just have that moment of pause and just
yeah.
touch them or brush by them or just do something so in their direction so that they can receive that sense of calm and awareness and that peace that in all that actuality we don't like to step out of character and and go into that. You know what I mean? We really don't because it takes a lot of work. Like I've seen people slowly get to the point of getting there because of the situation in his hand and how they were talking to themselves at the same time. It's like they were amping themselves up. Like if they do it again, if they do it again, if they do it like you shouldn't that shouldn't be your situation. You shouldn't and
Mm,
how do you say it? Oh, what's that word? Antagonize yourself. Because a
mm,
lot of the times we antagonize ourselves. And
yeah.
that is interesting. So what is like your way of like your medicine, your way like you zen down? It sounds like you have a lot of self-awareness in
Mm.
that type of way where you ask yourself and you have that moment of pause. But what's your real medicine that gets Nan relaxed?
Right. Well, it's really what we talked about. It's going back to the facts, what really happened. So as you said, maybe it's just my toast is burned, my piece of toast is done, and then I can decide what I want to think about it. But it's also questioning myself. Um, and it can be, well, if I'm angry, is that serving me? I don't know if you're familiar with the philosopher Socrates, apparently, three questions that he would ask. Is that thought useful to you? And so if I'm angry and if I punch somebody in the face, how is that useful to me? Probably not very much. So that can be a question that I ask myself. Is it true? Is it true that it's really terrible that the toast is burnt or something? Maybe not. And also, is it kind? Is it kind to somebody else that I think this way? Is it kind to myself? So I love
Absolutely.
those questions. Is it useful? Is it kind? Is it true? Whatever order you ask them. I like to bring myself back to those questions, to the facts too. So it gives me some space to create a new narrative. I can choose to stay furious or whatever is happening for me, but I can also change my point of view. And it's some like mental gymnastics that we learn, but it's so fun also to, when you start, you know that by the end of whatever time you dedicate to that, you're going to shift your perspective or not. Maybe you're going to decide that, no, I really want to be furious. Yes, it's serving me. Yes, it's true. Yes, it's kind for some reason. And that's okay. But at least you get that clarity that
Mm.
this is what I want. This is what's possible for me. So, yeah.
Exactly. It is that's true. I really like the way that you put it in perspective because when you were saying that, I was like, you know what? When I choose to stay in anger, I literally have to feed it to
Yeah.
continue on because it's draining. Like I have to literally put fuel to the fire to keep myself
Yes.
angry. And I'm just like, it's more of an energy to continue to stay in anger and frustration and sadness than it is to choose to change your perspective,
Right.
even change your wording and the way that you said it, asking those questions, man. We really do have to start coming back to ourselves, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Coming back to our heart, coming back to our mind, coming back to just how we perceive ourselves and
Mm,
how we perceive life. How our perspective is very subjective because of what we've grown up and what we've lived through and what we're exposed by. But it comes down to what do you really believe? You know what I mean? Those truths. And I think that's a great point. And because it relates to food in so many ways, because we need to, once we start recognizing our emotions, recognizing our words, recognizing our truth, then we
Mhm.
will realize food is nutrients, food is energy, and food is not something I necessarily need for every situation and occasion. You know what I
Totally.
mean? And it's a different type of outlook because you could start realizing and start educating yourself and realizing which foods you actually need for energy and which
Mhm.
foods you need for pleasure or joy or you don't really need at all because they're actually pretty toxic and they're not even food. They're just
Mhm.
chemicals and energy and a waste of energy because it drains you more. So it's just like you got to recognize that when once you're ready for that. And I think that's a really great point. And oh, I'm so sad that time is escaping us because I feel like I could keep talking to you about
Yeah,
so much
me
of this
too.
topic, Nan. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys want to know more about Nan, I have a lovely photo on my website. Just click right down there under and go onto her website because man, she has so many great content to help you keep on thinking about this topic and about your life and about where do you stand in your emotions, you know? So check her out because you won't be disappointed. And with that being said,